paper we will discuss today is the overview of the SPARC tokamak, Chapter 4.1, Full Performance H-mode Discharge. Since the full performance H-mode scenario is the most demanding on many of the SPARC engineering systems, it has been the focus of the majority of the analysis to date. With a plasma current of 8.7 mA and with H equal 1, SPARC achieves Q equal 11 and produces roughly 140 megawatt of fusion power. The operating space is represented in a popcorn in Figure 4, and further details of this operating point are given in Table 2. This scenario ends up operating right at the LH threshold in order to optimize the fusion gain through moving the higher density, and heating power would enable higher fusion power. Such operation would, however, likely exceed allowable neutron heating of the toroidal field magnets. At full field, the ICRH power is preliminarily absorbed in a helium-3 minority, with some additional absorption at the second harmonic of tritium. Even with significantly degraded confinement at H equals 0.7, a full field discharge is projected to achieve the primary SPARC mission of Q bigger than 2. This margin allows one to, for example, run scenarios with highly dissipative diverter solutions even if they lead to degradation of core confinement and still achieve the mission of Q bigger than 2. In addition, SPARC is projected to meet its Q bigger than 2 mission when performance is calculated using the other H scalings in ether physics expert group on confinement and transport. The various energy confinement time scalings proposed in Bardo League and the proposed H scaling in Bardo log. Note that the dependency of Q on the volume average density is sensitive to several details of the popcorn modeling, in particular on the density peaking. If one assumes constant density peaking, then moving to higher density generally improves the fusion gain. When one self-consistently calculates the peaking, however, then moving to higher volume averaged density tends to increase total power, but decreases gain. Calculation of the density peaking is one of the reasons for small differences between the analysis shown in this paper and independent popcorn analysis of SPARC in Rodrigo Fernandez. The good agreement between the independent analysis indicates that the design point is robust to these assumptions even with no density peaking. Popcorn analysis indicates that SPARC should achieve Q equal 4. This discharge runs near the achieved elongation and just above Q equals 3, which is often seen as a reasonable limit for the safety factor. Even in this regime, however, SPARC runs well below known beta and density limits. The density chosen the optimized gain while remaining within the allowable total fusion power sits at a Greenwald fraction of only 0.37. The normalized beta in this regime is roughly 1.0. SPARC is being designed to withstand the diverter heat flux in this full power discharge for the full 10th foot top with an attached single null plasma. Via strike point sweeping, details of the diverter physics are described in another paper in this series. Empirical scalings for the heat flux weights are used to determine the diverter heat loads. SPARC may be able to attain higher powers for shorter time periods, though the gain will likely be lower in those scenarios. This scenario is limited from reaching higher gain due to the LH threshold power. Through it may be possible to run at lower input power and achieve higher gain due to the hysteresis observed between entering and exiting H mode, in addition to the time-independent equilibrium shown figure 2. Time-dependent scenarios have been developed using TSC, plasma current and safety factor time traces generated with TSC for the full performance H-mode discharge are shown in figure 3. These simulations ensure that the desired flat top plasma can be achieved starting from plasma initiation and progressing to the end of the discharge. Given the SPARC V2 central solenoid and toroidal field coil set, TSC simulates all of the central solenoid modules and toroidal field coils, including the vertical stability coils. It also includes passively conducting structures such as the vacuum vessel and the vertical stability plate. Lower current discharges are considerably less demanding on the central solenoid and toroidal field coil set, since the majority of the central solenoid flux is required to ramp the plasma to full current, and so this first scenario likely sets most of the coil requirements for normal operation. Time-dependent transport simulations, including shortings and kinetic profile evolution, are described in Rodriguez Fernand, confirming that the plasma is well equilibrated a few seconds into the current flat top. To put this discharge in context, compare its operational parameters to these from discharges in the ITER confinement database DB4V5. Figure 5 shows how this SPARC discharge compares to other discharges in the database in terms of H, Q, beta, N per NZ, V, log, and T. These database points were filtered to include only standard aspect ratio tokamaks, and to exclude these without necessary data for each plot. SPARC sits further from stability limits than ITER in Q, beta, and N per NZ. It has very similar V and requires no extrapolation in either rho or T, unlike ITER. Figure 5 highlights data from 25 jet discharges in the DB4V5 database that are near non-dimensional matches to the SPARC operating point. Here, H, Q, beta, N per NZ, V, and T are all very close matches. Through SPARC has a somewhat smaller law. In other words, no new plasma physics is needed for this spark discharge, as non-dimensionally near identical discharges have already been run on jet, while the plasma physics is largely governed by these non-dimensional parameters. However, fusion power depends on absolute density and temperature. So SPARC's fusion power and gain will be considerably larger than those of the devices included in this database, including JET. Thank you for listening to the end of today's show.